Hello guys, today we're going to take a look at an RC tractor made by Britains back in 2008. It's a John Deere 7930 and we're just going to take a look at the different features and do a couple of little power tests. So first we're going to take a look at the different features of the model, and then I borrowed this tractor so that I could do some power tests. I want to know what sort of incline a commercially available tractor can pull a full load of trailer up, and that's for a diorama that I'm making. I need to note that the kind of tractors you can buy in the store are able to pull up the incline that I want to put into my diorama. So I'm going to use this tractor to test that out. So first thing here, the battery is 3.6 volts. That's probably pretty much the same as what you'd get with a Siku model. This is only 180 milliamp hours, but I mean the John Deere that I made is I think 250 milliamp hour battery in it, and it lasts quite a while, but that's because the motors are very efficient. If you turned the LEDs on my John Deere, they would take a huge amount of current constantly and the battery wouldn't last half as long. So 180 milliamp hours could be quite a while for this tractor. You'll see as well that we have this longer antenna sticking out here, and that's because this model is 27 megahertz, so it's considerably lower frequency than the Siku models and the frequency that I use. I use 2.4 gigahertz and Siku do the same. Some of Siku's earlier tractors would have been infrared, and they've switched to a 2.4 gigahertz radio since. You turn the model on and off on the battery there. That's pretty simple, and then you have a simple little controller here. We have 3 different channels, and this one is on channel A, so we have proportional control, so we can go slowly or go quickly. So that's pretty good control. I don't know if the proportional control is as fine as the Siku Control 32 models because I don't have any to compare them to, but it's definitely fine enough to make the model very controllable. The next thing is the steering. The steering actually activates the lights. So if we hold the steering to the right, we see our right indicators on, to the left indicators on. So that's how the lights or the indicators work. It has rear indicators only. There's just plastic indicators on the front here, so they're not real. It has lights in the bonnet here. They're not the brightest, but they do look pretty good. I mean, they're not obviously LEDs from the front here, but I'd imagine they were going for prolonging the battery life rather than having blinding lights. Obviously, if you don't have super bright LEDs, your battery's going to last a lot longer. The steering seems to have a fairly good range, and you have an adjuster here to kind of set the steering, set the center position of the steering. So that's pretty good to have that on the controller where it's kind of easily accessible. Like the Siku motors, this has a solid rear axle, so steering is going to be hampered slightly by that lack of a differential in the rear there. So that makes it a little bit trickier to steer. As well as the solid axle, there's not usually a huge amount of weight over the front wheels in these models, so it's quite easy for the model to kind of push the wheels on straight if there's too heavy a load on the back. With my Massey, I used to hang a butterfly mower off the front. That would really hold the front wheels to the ground and improve the steering quite a bit. So that's a downfall of all these models. The solid rear axle makes it very difficult to steer. The rear coupling is quite different on this model compared to the Siku Control 32 models. Instead of one solid piece of aluminium, this one has a couple of different connecting pieces here that all lift the hitch here. So it has two settings, just up or down, so no proportional control on the hitch, and when it's up, you see the hitch there, there's quite a bit of space above it, so you can still put the trailer on if you wanted, but that also means that the trailer could fall off, I suppose. As well as the normal hitch, this Britains tractor has this extra different kind of linkage. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that might be for older Britons, maybe the vintage kind of Britons accessories. They might have had a hitch like that back then, but I'm not 100% sure about that. And that just folds away when you don't need it, just folds in there. You can see the motor is clearly very different here. The Siku ones have a big square motor, so there wouldn't be all this space around the axle like there is in this Britains one. This actually looks slightly more like a realistic engine casting or realistic gearbox casting at the back here. Now I can't get a shot of it on the camera here, but the steering is basically, there's a servo here and it is a little arm, something like this, that just moves from left to right with a slot in it that catches a pin on the arm here on the steering and just slides it to the left or the right. I'm pretty sure the Siku tractors have a servo with a pinion gear on it, which mates to the rack on the steering in the Siku Control 32 models, so that's quite different also. And that might be why when the battery's going low in this model, the steering starts to be less effective. And that makes sense, because the further the arm pushes the wheels out, it's going to be under more load, because it's got added leverage now. It's pushing the load from further away from the pivot point on the servo, so it's going to be loaded down further. So as the battery goes low, it just doesn't have the power anymore to push to the extremes. You probably don't have that problem with the Siku motors, because the rack and pinion is pretty much going to be the same load the whole way along the rack. You can see all these holes in the roof of the cab here, and that is for a little speaker that's in the bottom of the cab there. And on your controller here you have a couple of different functions. So here's one for a horn, so that's just a little horn noise. And then this next one is engine sounds. So that's what the symbol in the middle is there, just the engine noises and the little reversing signal thing. Overall it seems like a pretty good model. I think it's mostly plastic. There's a couple of bits of die cast here and there I think, but the body is mostly plastic, which is considerably different from the Siku models, which I think are nearly all die cast. And I think this model was cheaper than its Siku counterpart back in 2008. I think it was it 7830 John Deere that Siku had at that time. I'm pretty sure that Siku model had the big boxy area around here. Wasn't all this engine detail that you get with this model and that sort of stuff. And I think it was a more expensive model, so it's probably because it had all that aluminium. Siku used infrared on that one, so they didn't have an antenna, and to hide the battery they sacrificed the detail in the cab. This tractor has clearly not sacrificed the detail in the cab. Everything looks to be finished perfectly, whereas Siku pretty much raised the floor to about the height of the mudguard here and made it almost square to hide the battery and the electronics. So, there's a bit of trade-offs there in designs. Not having proportional control of the lifting arms might have been another drawback. I think all the Siku models have proportional control over the lifting arms, so that might be another reason why Siku seems to have dominated the market instead of Britains. So we'll see if the John Deere can lift this butterfly mower. This is a very heavy model, so it would not be easy to lift. No, it can't lift that. If we spread the weight out a little less, lift it in. No. So that mower is clearly too heavy for the model, but that's not all you can use with a tractor like this. A simple bale fork is quite satisfying. So just a plastic bale fork, lift it up and down. So there you go, with bale fork, absolutely no problem, works fine. So you just have to find the right implement for your RC tractors really. This tractor looks pretty good behind a Britain's mower as well. So see that John Deere mower kind of suits it, and our lifting arms can lift the mower slightly. It might be struggling to get it up the last little piece there, but it's still pretty good. No problem pulling around the mower, and the mower is difficult enough to pull around because this rubber drags on the ground, so it's a pretty good example. So we tested all the other models with this little weighing scales thing, so we might as well do that here too. It wasn't getting enough to trigger the thing here, but it was reading 0.1 kilos, so that's a little less than the other motors, and I put that purely down to the tyres. I think they're a little bit harder than the tyres that you get with the Siku models, and I think as a result it's just not getting the grip, because the motor in this model has one of these servo savers in it, a little slip clutch that we seen in this Siku motor from the, actually I think it was from the John Deere of the same era as this Britain's tractor, but this tractor has the same idea, servo saver to stop the gearbox getting destroyed, and we clearly weren't tripping that, so obviously it's just lacking the grip on this smooth surface. I don't know if I've said before, but I don't do this test on sandpaper or something with a lot of traction because I don't want to destroy the gearboxes in the models. I just want to get a comparative test, so I do them all on this smooth wood here, and we get the results we get. So that's all there is to this Britain's John Deere model. It's a pretty good model. I'm going to use it in a video to find out what kind of inclines the commercial kind of tractors and my own tractor can climb with a full load of gravel. So that's so that I know what kind of inclines I can build into my diorama. Hopefully I'll find the incline angle that this tractor can't pull a full load up, and then I'll know not to make inclines on my diorama any steeper than that. So if you like this video, make sure and give it a thumbs up, and hit the like button and all that stuff. Let me know in the comments if you like this kind of video. It's possible in the future I'll get my hands on some Siku Control 32 models, and I'll do some similar testing and a similar walk around kind of video just to see the features of the different models. So it would be interesting to see how the different models compare. If you have any comments or suggestions, you can post them below or post them in the forum, and I'll do my best to answer them. And that's pretty much everything, so thanks very much for watching.